Now this video is going to be even more niche than usual. I mean, it might only be relevant to a few hundred people, and that's fine. I'm not out for the views on this. I just want to get this information across to the right people if at all possible, because I want to talk about the piece of technology that I bought this year that for me has been the most important one. And it's actually been life-changing in a positive way. It's only a cheapish thing. It's this. It's not specifically about this, though. It's about this whole range of products. There are a load of things that do a very similar thing to this. This is a blood oxygen monitor. Now, the idea is you wear this on your wrist while you're asleep at night, and it monitors your blood oxygen. Why would that be relevant? Well, this thing has diagnosed for me that I'm suffering from sleep apnea. But not only has it spotted that, it goes some way towards mitigating the effects of it. And that's the bit that's important with this range of devices, that if you're suffering from a mild form of sleep apnea like myself, you can do something about it just by buying something over the counter or over the internet. Now, if you're unfamiliar with sleep apnea, it's a condition that while you're asleep at night, you get into periods of very shallow breathing, or your breathing stops entirely for a period of time. Obviously not ideal. Now, this kind of condition, it starves your brain of oxygen, and then after a while your brain kind of realises that something's going on, even though you're asleep. It kind of shocks you into doing something about it. Either you roll over, or you start breathing, you gasp air again, or something like that. You know, it kind of automatically sorts itself out generally in the case of mild sleep apnea. However, it's not an ideal situation to be in, stopping breathing regularly or hardly breathing at all in your sleep, because what then happens is there's loads of knock-on effects, medical things that happen as a result of that. One of which I read somewhere is that there's a potential that it can lead to memory loss, because I nearly forgot what I was thinking there, which probably might be relevant, because the trouble is, of course, you're starving your brain of oxygen. This might explain why I can't remember much of the last 2 decades, or maybe that just because I wasn't paying attention. But the thing that really made me start thinking about this is the fact that you can have what you think is a full night's sleep, but this is going on all night. And then when you wake up in the morning, you feel dreadful. And you're thinking, well, I got to bed on time. I've done everything I should have done. What's going on? And then other days, you'll feel fine. So this is what got me into realising that something is going on while I'm asleep. That some days I feel dreadful, other days I don't. So from there, I thought, well, I'll need to figure out what's happening. So I started off by going down the route of looking at sleep monitoring devices. So in early 2019, I bought an Oura Ring. This is an activity monitor, but it's one that you can easily wear on a finger overnight, and at which point it tracks a number of aspects about your sleep. So every day I'd charge it up, I'd put it on every night. Every morning I'd wake up and look through the stats for the night before. And while those stats all looked very pretty, I couldn't see anything unusual going on. So after a couple of months of this, I ended up just stopping wearing it. And by now, I can't even remember where I've put it. It wasn't really telling me too much. It was saying you were going to sleep at this time, you were waking up at that time. You had REM sleep here, deep sleep there. All things I couldn't really do too much about, but nowhere in that information was it saying that there was anything particularly out of the ordinary. I wore these things for quite a period of time, and one day looked pretty much the same as another, except some days I'd wake up feeling dreadful and other days I wouldn't, but the data didn't show that anything particularly odd had happened. But there were occasions when I could recall that I'd woke up gasping for air in the middle of the night. Not often, and there were probably more than I remember, because I tend to sleep quite deeply. I'll sleep through noises and things. So at times I'd wake up and sort of, and then within a second or two I was asleep again, and I forget about it by the next day. The ones that I really remembered, though, was where I'd actually jumped out of bed, choking, thinking that I'd swallowed something. Now, not something in my sleep. You know, you get like a dream that will accompany whatever's going on. So it'd be like I've swallowed a stick or a piece of Lego or something, and I've been trying to get this thing out, and I'm thinking, hold on, I'm in the bedroom, what's this? And then, so, you know, I'd go back to sleep again. But those are the ones I remember where I jumped out of bed, and those are the ones that really got me a little bit concerned about this. So I started reading up on sleep apnea, and it seemed like the sort of gasping for breath in the middle of the night and a few of the other things were all symptoms. But to get diagnosed with it properly, I'd have to go through the whole process, going to the doctors. They'd have to refer me on to some sleep clinic. I didn't really want to go all the way down that route. I thought, well, I'll just find out for myself, which is why I went and bought another piece of tech. It's my solution to pretty much everything. But this time it actually did work. So when I bought this at the beginning of 2020 from Amazon, it cost me approximately £130. It felt a little bit overpriced when it arrived. It just feels a bit cheap all round. But then again, given what it's done for me, I can't complain. And it's now gone up to £150 as well. Now, while it can be used as a simple activity monitor for step counting during the day, it's really being sold more as a nighttime monitoring device for blood oxygen and heart rate. There's an accompanying application for Android and iOS, and you really need to use that to adjust the settings and to read the results. It's clearly not been designed as a fashion accessory. It comes in two pieces. There's the wrist strap, which incorporates an OLED screen and a motion sensor. This can be used on its own as a step counter or an ugly watch. But overnight you attach this up to a finger sensor, and that contains the pulse and the oxygen monitoring equipment. It seems quite a clunky workman-like setup, but it does work and it's accurate, and that's what's important. If I was given a choice between something that looks good or something that works well, when it comes to health tech, I'll definitely go for the latter. It's charged via USB. There's the appropriate lead for this in the box, and I'll say more about that lead later because this is one of the issues that a lot of people have with this particular device. But carrying on for the moment, a full charge allows it to monitor 2 nights of sleep as well as stay on during the day. You can also turn the device off by holding down the single button that's on the top. That button also switches it between modes, but generally the idea is that at night you put the wristband on, attach up the finger sensor, and then go to sleep. In the manual they show it being used on a thumb, but it didn't really fit on mine. I found it a bit tight, so I stuck it on a finger. That worked just as well. But then in the morning you take the whole thing off, and once you've taken it off your finger or unplugged the sensor, it saves the data as a sleep session. You can then load that into the app. As long as you've got the screen on the device switched on, it will automatically sync over Bluetooth. And then you go and look at the data. Now, I've seen people commenting about the app and how it's a bit unfriendly, but the truth is the data you need is there. You just need to understand what you're looking at and the importance of it. At the top is the date, and then below that, how long the device was monitoring for and how much of that time was spent with your blood oxygen reading below 90%. Ideally, it should always be above 90%, so you want that time really to be 0, if possible. On this page, mine's 33 minutes. And then below that, you've got a count of the oxygen level drops that were over 4% from the baseline and the drops per hour. Now, this is a very important number, as to get a diagnosis of sleep apnea, this number has to rise above 5 drops per hour. So, for example, if you look at this day, it's 2.6. So based on that result, I'm fine, no problem. And you know what, if I was to take part in a proper monitored sleep study, that would be the day that they'd have tested, and they'd have sent me home and say, oh, you're fine, no problem. However, look at this one, 8.9. And then this one, 9.7 drops per hour. On these days, I'm firmly in the apnea camp. This highlights the benefit of being able to test at home over an extended period of time. Like I mentioned before, I get good nights and I get bad nights, and this was a very bad night. Now, I know what's happened here. I went to bed after having a few too many drinks, so that's obviously something that I should steer well clear of in future. The other stats are pretty easy to understand. You've got your average and lowest blood oxygen level, a score out of 10, and there's an arrow on the right. You really want that to be firmly in the green, like this one. And then you've got the average heart rate. And each morning, when you unplug that sensor before you sync, it will show you the score out of 10 and the number of drops, but that's all it shows. So yeah, the main thing is the drops per hour. That's the important one, and the lowest SpO2, because these tell me that under official testing purposes, on certain nights, I'd fall into the category of someone with sleep apnea. But now that I know what's going on, I know that there are a few things I should do to try and alleviate the problem. I can lose some weight, I can avoid alcohol, but then there's the worst case scenario that I'd require some kind of surgery, or possibly a need to wear a CPAP mask every night, which forces oxygen into the system while I sleep. However, as well as diagnosing the problem, this is also provided me with a solution to it. Now, this might not work for everyone, but for me, it has done. Because what this does is, if your blood oxygen drops below a certain percentage, you can have it vibrate and alert you to that fact. And this is sufficient for me just to make me roll over in my sleep and get into a better position where I'm able to breathe easier. Because for me, it tends to happen that my blood oxygen, this apnea business, it drops if I find myself flat on my back or if I've got my face buried in a pillow. Just you roll around in your sleep and you get yourself into a weird position. Well, this detects when that's happened and it stops it going any further. So what will happen is it will vibrate, and there's a little vibration motor on the top here, just sufficient to make you feel it in your finger, wake you up enough to roll over into a different position and then just go back to sleep again. It keeps vibrating until the blood oxygen reaches the level at which you've set the threshold. Now, the threshold is set in the application. Initially, out of the box, it was set at 90%. I found it was vibrating all the time that first night. I had to take it off in the end because it was just keeping me awake. I tended to find after that, when I monitored it over a few more nights, that my blood oxygen would drop to sort of 87, 88%, then back up to 90 odd, and back down to 87, 88. So I set it to 86 because that seemed to be the point, that if it hit there, it was just off the cliff and it was just going to go down and down and down until I woke up gasping for breath. So ever since then now, gets to 86%, buzzes, I roll over in my sleep into a different position, get myself into a position that's more suitable for breathing, and just go back to sleep again. It really has made a massive difference, and I haven't had those situations while wearing this where I've ended up with gasping for breath again. This has solved that problem. So you'll no doubt have noticed the graphs at the bottom of the stats. The bottom one of these is heart rate and the upper one is blood oxygen measurement, and it's colour coded as well. Ideally it should all be green, but it goes orange or red depending upon how much it drops. You might also notice the little triangle on the top graph. That's an indicator to show when the device buzzed me. The time for all this is shown at the bottom of the page, and you can zoom if you really feel the need to drill down, but for me it's not really necessary. You see, here I was alerted twice, and both times I'll have rolled over and that's resolved the issue. And on this one I've been buzzed 3 times, quite close together, as I must have kept settling back into the same sleeping position, but eventually it got me to sort it out and I didn't have another alert all night again. Now, funnily enough, a few days ago, I'd left this on charge downstairs, gone up to bed and thought, forget it, I can't be bothered going down, it's only one night, what does it matter? I got a bit blasé about the whole thing. What do you know, about 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up gasping for air, jumped out of bed. I'd had this dream that I got a stick stuck sideways across my throat and I couldn't breathe. I mean, that was like the one day in months that I hadn't worn this thing, and it happened again. So I'll definitely be wearing something like this from now on. I say something like this because it doesn't have to be this one. There's a lot of different devices that do this kind of thing. It's more the general idea of a blood oxygen monitor with a vibration motor attached. And this one, there is a lot of room for improvement. First off, that socket, it's a micro HDMI. They must have had their reasons for doing things this way. Perhaps it's a particularly resilient socket for its size. But what this means is that you'll have to look after the lead that comes in the box, as finding another USB to micro HDMI lead is not easy. In addition, there are 2 versions of this kit. There's the one with the white lead that comes with it, the one I've got. That white lead is only for charging, but there's another version of this with a black lead, and that one can handle data transfer as well. And that's the setup you'll need if you want to connect it up with a PC app. Now, I don't. I've got all the data I need, and for me, it's less about the data and more about those alerts. But it's definitely something that I needed to mention. Another issue is the wrist strap. The clasp on it is really quite odd. It's difficult to put it on. It usually takes a few goes before I get the right level of tightness. And it's also relatively easy to have the thing fall off your wrist. Mine's fallen off quite a number of times in the night when I've just snagged it on something. And then that leads on to the sensor, because I can see the stress on this between the cable of the sensor and the wrist device is going to cause some problems over time. Also, that sensor, it does have quite a tight grip on a finger. Presumably it needs to have, but I can also see it being unsuitable for anyone with bigger fingers. And one thing to me that seems like a bit of a missed opportunity, a strange omission, is the fact that this thing, it's on your wrist, it knows the time, it can vibrate, and yet there's no alarm feature. Now that I've discovered what's going on in my sleep, I don't really have too much cause to look at that app every day, but if you're more into the stats, you might find a few things in that app that annoy you. One example is these double readings. It turns out that it's kind of true, there should be 2 readings there, but it could be handled better. You see, these are days when I've started 2 sleeps on the same day. On the night of April the 1st, I really went to bed after midnight, so it's really the 2nd of April. And then on the night of the 2nd of April, I went to bed on the 2nd of April at 11:30 or just after, so that's why I've got 2 readings on that day. And then finally, one last gripe. The finger sensor measures things by shining a light through your finger. Well, that looks fine during the day, but in the dark conditions of a bedroom, you end up with a finger that glows like E.T., and if you put your hand on your pillow near your face, that light is enough to keep you awake. Now, if you read through the tech press like I do, you might have seen articles mentioning an O2 sensor in the Apple Watch and the likelihood of sleep monitoring becoming a feature of that device in the future. Well, if those things are accurate, then there really would be nothing stopping an Apple Watch from doing the same job as the device that I've bought. It could monitor your blood oxygen and vibrate when the level dips too low, so those would be very welcome additions to any future revision of that device. So yeah, I'm really glad that I bought this device, and I'm interested to see how things develop in this area. I had to mention the thing about the Apple Watch. I know there's other devices that could do this, but it just needs a proper company to come in here and start doing things like this a little bit more finesse, a little bit better than this, because I can't imagine this is going to last too long. I'm going to snap something off in my sleep. I'll have to buy a new one. It would be nice if the Apple Watch, for example, did have sleep monitoring, blood oxygen monitoring, and could vibrate to wake you up in your sleep. It seems like the articles about the fact that Apple were including both sleep monitoring and blood oxygen monitoring in the upcoming Apple Watch updates, they didn't seem to join the dots to say, hold on a minute, this is for sleep apnea. It's one of the things it's for, obviously, but for someone like me, that would be a big deal. It just means I could wear my watch at night, and you think, well, when do you charge it? You can charge an Apple Watch while you're having a shower in the morning, so you don't need to worry about that. They don't take too long at all to charge. Just need someone with a kind of better production facilities than all the people who are making these at the moment. They're really janky devices. You can see sort of poor apps, badly translated, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of room for improvement here. However, I'm really glad that I bought this thing because it has made a positive change to my life, and I'm no longer waking up thinking I'm dying in the middle of the night, which is always a good thing, isn't it? So I know this isn't going to be the kind of video that will appeal to a wide audience, but hopefully there's a few people out there who are suffering a similar kind of situation and don't really want to go down that whole getting properly monitored and healthcare and all that kind of business. It might be worth trying something like this. This is all I'm saying. I'm not even going to put affiliate links because, you know, this one isn't really the best in the world, but just have a look at this area of tech and see how things develop in the future. But anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.